Maya Clark wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished cleaning the engine room of the spaceship Aurora's Dawn. She had been working as a maintenance crew member for 2 years now, fixing pipes and cleaning floors while the ship traveled between different planets. Life wasn't easy for humans in space, especially when most alien species looked down on them as primitive creatures. The 28-year-old woman had joined the crew to escape her poor life on Earth. Her younger brother Danny had been paralyzed in a car accident, and Maya had spent years learning how to help him walk again. She knew more about helping disabled people than most doctors, but nobody seemed to care about that skill in space. Maya was putting away her tools when Captain Rodriguez called her to his office. She wondered what she had done wrong this time. Last week, she had spoken up when she saw alien crew members treating human workers badly. The captain had warned her to keep quiet and do her job. "Clark, you're being transferred," the captain said without looking up from his papers. The Dragon King requested a human servant for his palace. "You leave tomorrow." Maya felt her heart sink. Everyone knew about the Scorian dragons. They were huge, powerful aliens who ruled a massive empire across many star systems. Dragons stood 12 feet tall with crystal-like scales that changed colors. They had been in space for thousands of years and thought all other species were beneath them. "Sir, I don't know anything about being a servant," Maya said. "You'll learn fast," the captain replied. "The dragons pay well for human workers. Consider it a promotion." Maya knew better. This was punishment for speaking her mind. But she had no choice. Refusing would mean losing her job and being sent back to Earth with nothing. The next day, Maya packed her few belongings and boarded a small transport ship. The journey to the dragon homeworld took 3 days. During the trip, she tried to learn basic dragon customs from the ship's computer. Dragons valued strength above everything else. They respected power and despised weakness. Showing fear or backing down was the worst thing you could do. When they arrived at Scorios Prime, Maya gasped at the sight. The Dragon Palace was a massive crystal structure floating in space above a swirling gas giant. It sparkled like a jewel against the colorful clouds of the planet below. Ships moved in and out of docking bays that looked like dragon mouths carved into the crystal walls. A tall dragon with golden scales met Maya at the docking bay. His name was Commander Veltaros, and he looked at her like she was an insect. "Another human," he said with disgust. "Follow me and stay quiet." Maya walked through corridors that were 3 times taller than anything built for humans. The walls were covered in crystal formations that glowed with soft light. Tapestries showed dragons in battle, breathing fire and destroying their enemies. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. They stopped at a large door decorated with silver dragons. Commander Veltaros turned to Maya with a cruel smile. "You will serve Prince Kaelseth," he said, "the king's youngest son. He has been broken for 50 years. Many servants have tried to care for him. Most quit within days. Those who stay longer often go mad from his anger." The commander opened the door and pushed Maya inside. The room was dark except for a few glowing crystals. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. Books had been torn apart and thrown against the walls. In the center of the mess sat a young dragon on what looked like a floating chair. Prince Kaelseth had dark blue scales that seemed to absorb light. His upper body was powerful and muscular, but his legs hung limp and motionless. His golden eyes burned with rage and pain. When he saw Maya, his expression turned to disgust. "Another one," he snarled. "What species are you supposed to be? You look even more pathetic than the others." "I'm human, Your Highness," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My name is Maya Clark." The prince laughed bitterly. "Human. The newest species to crawl out of their mud pit and pretend they belong in space. Do you know why you're here, little creature?" Maya had heard whispers during her journey. Prince Kaelseth had been in a terrible accident 50 years ago. His spacecraft had crashed, crushing his spine. The best dragon doctors had tried everything to heal him, but his legs remained paralyzed. In dragon society, being unable to fly or fight made you worthless. "I'm here to help you, Your Highness," Maya said. "Help me?" The prince's voice rose to a roar. "Look around you. Do you see what's left of the last servant who tried to help me? I threw him out the window. The one before that ran away crying after 2 days. What makes you think a primitive human can do what the greatest doctors in the Empire cannot?" Maya looked at the broken furniture and torn books. She had seen this kind of anger before. Her brother Danny had gone through the same rage when he first realized he might never walk again. But she had also seen him learn to hope again. "Maybe I can't fix your legs," Maya said quietly. But I can clean up this room. I can bring you food that doesn't taste like medicine. I can listen when you need to talk. Sometimes that's enough. Prince Kaleseth stared at her for a long moment. Then he grabbed a crystal sculpture from a nearby table and hurled it at the wall next to Maya's head. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. Get out, he whispered. Before I decide to break you too. Maya stood her ground. I'm not leaving, Your Highness. I've seen anger like yours before. I've seen pain like yours before. And I've seen people get better. Impossible, the prince roared. The greatest healers in the galaxy have examined me. My spine is shattered beyond repair. The crystal matrix that allows dragons to channel energy through our bodies is destroyed. I am broken. Maya walked closer, careful not to step on the sharp crystal pieces. You're not broken, Your Highness. You're hurt. There's a difference. For a moment, something flickered in the prince's golden eyes. It might have been hope or it might have been curiosity. But then the anger returned and he turned away from her. Clean this mess if you must, he said coldly. But don't expect gratitude. And don't expect miracles. I am exactly what the doctors say I am. Nothing you do will change that. Maya began picking up the broken pieces of crystal and furniture. As she worked, she watched the prince carefully. She noticed small things that others might have missed. His tail twitched slightly when she made noise. His breathing changed when she moved to different parts of the room. These were tiny signs, but they gave her hope. Maybe the greatest doctors in the galaxy didn't know everything after all. Maya spent her first week learning the palace routines. She woke up before dawn to prepare Prince Kaleseth's meals, cleaned his rooms, and tried to stay out of his way when his anger flared up. The other servants whispered warnings about the prince's violent moods, but Maya had dealt with worse during her brother's recovery. Every morning, she brought the prince his breakfast and found new damage to repair. Sometimes it was broken dishes. Other times it was furniture thrown against the walls. The prince seemed determined to prove that everything around him was as broken as he believed himself to be. On the 8th day, Maya decided to try something different. Instead of just cleaning up the mess, she sat down on the floor near the prince's floating chair and began sorting through his torn books. What are you doing? Kaleseth demanded. These books can be repaired, Maya said, carefully matching torn pages. This one is about dragon history. This one talks about flying techniques. They're too valuable to throw away, the prince snorted. Flying techniques. How cruel of you to remind me. Maya looked up at him. Do you remember what it felt like to fly? Of course I remember, the prince said bitterly. Every dragon remembers their first flight. It's the most important day of our lives, the day we truly become dragons. Tell me about it, Maya said, continuing to sort the pages. For a moment, the prince's expression softened. I was young, even by dragon standards. Only 300 years old. Most dragons don't attempt their first solo flight until they're at least 400. But I was impatient. Maya listened quietly, noticing how the prince's voice changed when he talked about flying. The anger faded, replaced by something that sounded like longing. The sky was perfect that day, Kaleseth continued. Clear and blue, with strong winds coming from the east. I launched myself from the highest tower of the palace and felt the wind catch my wings. For those few minutes, I was truly free. What happened to end that feeling? Maya asked gently. The prince's face hardened again. Reality. I crashed my ship 50 years later and lost everything that made me a dragon. Now I'm just a broken creature in a floating chair. Maya set down the book pages and looked directly at the prince. Your Highness, can I tell you about my brother? I don't care about your family, Kaleseth said, but he didn't tell her to stop. Danny was 17 when he had his accident, Maya said. A drunk driver hit his car and crushed his spine. The doctors said he would never walk again. For months he was just like you, angry, bitter, throwing things and yelling at everyone who tried to help. The prince's golden eyes flickered with interest despite himself. But then something changed, Maya continued. Danny realized that being paralyzed didn't mean being powerless. He started learning new things. He became amazing at chess and computer programming. He learned to paint beautiful pictures using a brush held in his mouth. He even started racing in a wheelchair and won competitions. Touching, the prince said sarcastically. But your brother is still paralyzed. Yes, he is, Maya agreed. But he's not broken. He found new ways to be strong. Maya stood up and walked to the window. Outside, young dragons practiced flying around the palace spires. Their scales caught the light as they dove and soared through the air. Your Highness, what if being strong doesn't just mean flying and fighting? Maya asked. What if there are other kinds of strength? Prince Kalzith was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. In dragon society, there is only one kind of strength that matters. Physical power. The ability to fly, to fight, to dominate your enemies. Everything else is weakness. Maybe dragon society is wrong, Maya said. The prince's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. You dare question thousands of years of dragon wisdom? I question anything that says a person's worth depends on their body working perfectly, Maya replied calmly. Your mind is still sharp. Your spirit is still fierce. Your heart still beats with dragon fire. Are those things worth nothing? Before the prince could answer, the door burst open. Dragon King Zethkalar strode into the room, his massive silver scales gleaming. He was even larger than his son, with scars from ancient battles covering his arms and chest. Maya immediately dropped to her knees as she had been taught. Father, Prince Kalzeth said stiffly. The king looked around the room, taking in the broken furniture and scattered books. His gaze settled on Maya, who was still kneeling on the floor. So this is the human, King Zethkalar said. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. I've heard interesting reports about you, little creature. Your Majesty, Maya said, not daring to look up. Commander Veltaros tells me you've been filling my son's head with strange ideas, the king continued. Ideas about weakness being strength, about questioning our ancient ways. Maya felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to speak. Your Majesty, I only want to help Prince Kalzeth. Help him? The king laughed, but there was no humor in it. Look at him, human. My son has been examined by the finest doctors in the Empire. His condition is permanent. There is no help for him. Maya finally looked up, meeting the king's fierce golden eyes. With respect, Your Majesty, maybe the doctors haven't tried everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. King Zethkalar's scales began to glow with inner fire, a sign of dangerous anger. You think your primitive human medicine is superior to our advanced healing techniques? The king asked softly. I think different isn't always primitive, Maya said, her voice shaking but determined. Sometimes a fresh perspective can see things that familiarity misses. Prince Kalzeth watched the exchange with fascination and terror. No one spoke to his father like this. No one questioned dragon superiority and lived. King Zethkalar stepped closer to Maya, his massive form towering over her. Human, you walk a very dangerous path. My patience has limits. So does my son's suffering, Maya replied, and I can't watch it continue without trying to help. For a long moment, the king stared down at the small human woman who dared to challenge him. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Interesting, he said. Very interesting. You have exactly 1 month, human. If you can show me any improvement in my son's condition, I will consider your methods. If you fail, or if you fill his head with false hope only to disappoint him again, I will have you executed. Do you understand? Maya's throat felt dry, but she nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. Good. The king turned to leave, then paused. And human? My son has suffered enough. Don't make his pain worse with impossible dreams. After the king left, Prince Kalzeth stared at Maya in amazement. Are you insane? Do you know what you just agreed to? Maya sat down again and picked up the scattered book pages. I agreed to try to help you, Your Highness. That's what I came here to do. But if you fail, he'll kill you. Then I better not fail, Maya said simply. Prince Kalzeth was quiet for a while, watching Maya work. Finally, he spoke. What would you have me do? Maya looked up and smiled. First, we're going to clean up this room. Then we're going to start with some simple exercises. And then, Your Highness, we're going to prove that dragons aren't the only ones who know about strength. Maya's first week of working with Prince Kalzeth was harder than anything she had ever done. The prince resisted every exercise she suggested, claiming they were pointless human foolishness. But Maya had learned patience during her brother's recovery, and she refused to give up. She started with simple movements, asking the prince to try lifting his arms in different directions and rotating his shoulders. At first, he complained that these exercises were beneath his dignity. Dragons were meant for grand gestures, not tiny movements like a hatchling learning to use its wings. Your Highness, Maya explained as she guided his arms through the motions. When my brother was learning to walk again, the doctors told us that the body has to remember how to move before it can actually move. These small exercises teach your muscles and nerves to work together again. My nerves are dead, the prince said flatly. The doctors proved it with their crystal scanners. Maybe they're not dead, Maya said. Maybe they're just sleeping. On the 10th day, something changed. As Maya was helping the prince stretch his back muscles, she noticed his tail twitch slightly when she pressed on a certain spot. It was just a tiny movement, barely visible, but it was there. Your Highness, did you feel that? Maya asked excitedly. Feel what? The prince replied, but his voice was uncertain. Maya pressed the same spot again, and once more his tail twitched. This time the prince's eyes widened in shock. That's impossible, he whispered. I haven't felt anything below my chest in 50 years. Maya's heart was racing with excitement, but she forced herself to stay calm. Let's try some more exercises and see what happens. Over the next few days, the tiny sensations grew stronger. Prince Kalseth began to feel tingling in his lower back and the base of his tail. The feelings were weak and came and went, but they were real. For the first time since his accident, the prince began to hope. Word of these developments spread quickly through the palace. Servants whispered about the human who was performing miracles. Some dragons were amazed, while others were suspicious. How could a primitive human succeed where the Empire's greatest doctors had failed? Commander Veltaros was the most suspicious of all. He had been the royal physician for over 200 years, and had personally examined the prince dozens of times. The idea that his diagnosis could be wrong was unthinkable. Your Majesty, he said to King Zethkalar during a private meeting, I believe this human is using some form of trickery. Perhaps drugs or mechanical devices hidden in her clothing. No one could achieve such results through simple exercises. The king was troubled by these reports. He wanted his son to recover, but he also needed to maintain order in his court. If word spread that human medicine was superior to dragon science, it could undermine the entire foundation of their society. Bring me the human, the king commanded. I will examine her methods myself. When Maya was brought before the king, she found him sitting on his crystal throne in the great hall. The room was vast and filled with dragon nobles, all watching her with suspicious eyes. She felt very small and very alone as she knelt before the throne. Human, the king said, his voice echoing through the hall. You will demonstrate your treatment methods on my son. Now, in front of the entire court. Maya's hands were shaking as she was led to where Prince Kalseth waited in his floating chair. The prince looked nervous too, but he tried to give her an encouraging smile. Just do what we've been practicing, he whispered. Maya began the exercises she had taught the prince, guiding his arms and back through the careful stretches. The dragon nobles watched with growing impatience. To them, these simple movements looked like nothing more than gentle touching. This is your miraculous treatment? Commander Veltaros laughed. A child could do this. Maya ignored the comments and continued working. She pressed on the spot that had triggered the tail movement and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, clearly visible to everyone in the hall, Prince Kalseth's tail twitched. The hall fell silent. Then Prince Kalseth spoke, his voice filled with wonder. I can feel your hand, he said. I can actually feel it. The silence stretched on as the implications sank in. Commander Veltaros stepped forward, his face pale. This proves nothing, he said desperately. Muscle spasms are common in paralyzed patients. It doesn't mean he's truly healing. But King Zethkalar was staring at his son with new eyes. Kalseth, is this real? Can you truly feel sensation returning? Yes, father, the prince replied. Every day it gets a little stronger. Maya has been teaching me exercises that help my body remember how to work. The king stood up from his throne and walked down to where Maya knelt. Human, how is this possible? Our doctor said the damage was permanent. Maya took a deep breath before answering. Your Majesty, human medicine focuses on working with what remains rather than only replacing what's lost. We believe the body wants to heal itself if given the right encouragement. But the crystal matrix in his spine is shattered. Commander Veltaros protested. Without it, no dragon can channel energy to their lower body. Maybe the matrix isn't as damaged as you thought, Maya said. Maybe it just needs help remembering how to conduct energy again. To prove her point, Maya guided Prince Kalseth through a breathing exercise she had developed. She had noticed that when dragons were calm and focused, their scales glowed more brightly. This suggested that their energy flowed more freely when they were relaxed. As the prince breathed deeply and concentrated, his scales began to glow with soft blue light. The glow started at his head and slowly traveled down his neck and chest. Usually it stopped at the point of his injury. But today, for the first time, a faint glow continued down into his lower back. The entire court gasped. Even Commander Veltaros stared in shock. Dragons who could not channel energy to their lower bodies could not glow there either. This was absolute proof that something fundamental had changed. King Szeth Kalar knelt down beside Maya, his huge form dwarfing her small human body. "How did you know to try this?" he asked quietly. "My brother taught me that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken," Maya replied. "Sometimes it's about finding new pathways around the damage. The human body is very good at adapting when it has to." "And you believe dragon bodies can adapt too?" Maya nodded. "I think all living things want to heal, Your Majesty. Sometimes they just need someone to show them how." Prince Kelseth was staring at his glowing scales with tears in his golden eyes. "Maya, do you think I'll ever fly again?" Maya considered the question carefully. She didn't want to promise something impossible, but she also didn't want to destroy the hope that was growing in the prince's heart. "I don't know, Your Highness," she said honestly, "but I think you'll be amazed at what you can do once you stop believing you can't do anything." King Szeth Kalar stood up and addressed the court. "It appears we have witnessed something remarkable today. The humans' methods show promise that we did not expect." Commander Veltaro stepped forward angrily. "Your Majesty, surely you don't intend to abandon thousands of years of proven dragon medicine for the primitive techniques of a recently discovered species?" The king's eyes flashed with warning. "I intend to help my son, Veltaros. If that means learning from humans, then perhaps it's time we admitted that wisdom can come from unexpected sources." As the court dismissed and the nobles filed out, many of them whispered among themselves. Some were excited by what they had seen. Others were troubled by the implications. If humans could heal dragons in ways that dragon doctors could not, what did that say about dragon superiority? That night, as Maya helped Prince Kelseth with his evening exercises, the prince asked her a question that had been troubling him. "Maya, what if the court decides that your success makes dragons look weak? What if they decide to stop your treatments to preserve their pride?" Maya paused in her work and looked at the prince seriously. "Then we'll have to prove that being healed doesn't make you weak, Your Highness. We'll have to show them that recovery is the strongest thing anyone can do." 3 weeks after Prince Kelseth's public demonstration, Maya woke to find palace guards outside her door. The captain of the guard, a massive dragon named General Thexmore, stood waiting with an official scroll in his clawed hands. "Human Maya Clark," he announced in a voice like grinding stone, "you are hereby summoned to answer formal charges before the Royal Council." Maya's heart sank. She had known this moment would come. The conservative dragons who opposed her methods had been growing bolder in their criticism, claiming that she was undermining the very foundations of dragon society. In the council chamber, Maya found herself facing a semicircle of the most powerful dragons in the empire. Their scales ranged from deep red to brilliant gold, and their eyes burned with ancient wisdom and barely contained hostility. At the center sat King Szeth Kalar, his expression unreadable. General Thexmore stepped forward to present the charges. "Lords and ladies of the council, we are here to address a grave threat to our civilization. This human has used unknown methods to deceive us into believing she can heal what our greatest doctors know to be incurable. Her alleged success with Prince Kelseth undermines our entire medical establishment and calls into question the superiority that has made our empire great." Commander Veltaros rose to support the general's words. "I have examined Prince Kelseth personally. While I admit there appears to be some improvement in his condition, I believe this is either temporary or the result of artificial stimulation. No primitive species should be able to achieve what our advanced science cannot." Maya listened to the accusations with growing anger. They weren't interested in whether her methods worked. They were afraid of what her success meant for their precious pride. "The council has decided," General Thexmore continued, "that you must prove your methods are genuinely superior, not merely lucky accidents or temporary improvements. You will be given one final test." King Szeth Kalar stood and addressed Maya directly. "Human, you will be given access to Captain Mordain, a war hero who has been paralyzed for over 2 centuries. His injuries are far more severe than my son's, and every doctor in the Empire has declared his condition permanently hopeless. You will have exactly 3 months to show significant improvement in his condition." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. 3 months to heal someone who had been paralyzed for 200 years? It seemed impossible, even with everything she had learned. "If you succeed," the king continued, "the council will acknowledge that your methods have value and allow you to continue treating dragons. If you fail, you will be executed as a fraud and deceiver." All humans will be banned from positions of medical responsibility throughout the Empire. General Thexmore smiled coldly. Do you accept this challenge, human? Or will you admit now that your previous success was merely luck? Maya looked around the chamber at the hostile faces surrounding her. She thought about Prince Kael'Zeth, who had made such amazing progress. She thought about her brother Danny, who had refused to give up when everyone said his situation was hopeless. She thought about all the dragons in the Empire who might be suffering unnecessarily because their doctors had given up too easily. I accept, Maya said quietly. 2 days later, Maya met Captain Mordain for the first time. He was housed in a forgotten wing of the palace far from the main court areas. When Maya entered his chamber, she understood why the dragons had hidden him away. The captain had once been a magnificent warrior. His scales were deep bronze, scarred by countless battles, and his upper body still showed the powerful muscles of a fighter. But his wings were twisted and broken, hanging uselessly at his sides. His legs were thin and wasted from centuries of disuse. Most heartbreaking of all was the look in his ancient golden eyes. They held no hope at all, only the weary patience of someone waiting to die. So, Captain Mordain said when he saw Maya, they've sent me another healer. Are you here to tell me about miracle treatments and the power of positive thinking? No, sir, Maya replied. I'm here to ask if you're willing to try something different. The captain laughed bitterly. Different? Child, I've been poked and prodded by every healer in the Empire. I've had my spine rebuilt with crystal matrices, my nerves stimulated with energy fields, and my muscles treated with regeneration serums. Nothing works because there's nothing left to work with. Maya approached carefully, studying the captain's posture and the way he held himself. She could see immediately that his injuries were far worse than Prince Kael'Zeth's had been, but she had also learned to look for things that others missed. Captain, may I ask you about your accident? War, not accident, he corrected. I was defending a border station from enemy raiders. Their ship exploded just as I was trying to rescue the crew. The blast caught me full in the back and wings. Been like this ever since. Maya nodded thoughtfully. And in all that time, have you ever felt anything? Any sensation at all? Pain, the captain said flatly. Constant burning pain where my wings connect to my back. The doctors say it's phantom sensation, nerves firing randomly because they're damaged. But Maya had learned something important during her work with Prince Kael'Zeth. Pain, even phantom pain, meant that nerves were still active. If nerves could transmit pain signals, they might be able to transmit other signals too. Captain, would you be willing to let me examine that area where you feel the pain? For the next hour, Maya carefully studied the captain's back and wings. The damage was extensive, far worse than anything she had dealt with before. But as she worked, she noticed something interesting. When she touched certain spots, the captain's breathing changed slightly. His muscle tension shifted in ways that suggested his nervous system was responding, even if he couldn't feel it consciously. Captain, Maya said finally, I think your nerves aren't as dead as the doctors believe. I think they're just confused, Captain Mordain snorted. Confused nerves? That's a new one. Think about it, Maya continued. You've been in the same position for 200 years. Your body has forgotten how to move. Your nerves have forgotten how to carry signals properly. Maybe we can teach them to remember. And how exactly would we do that? Maya smiled, very carefully and very slowly. The same way we teach anyone to do something they've forgotten how to do. We start with the basics and build up from there. The work was incredibly difficult. Captain Mordain's muscles had atrophied far more than Prince Kael'Zeth's had. His bones were brittle from lack of use. His wings were so damaged that Maya wasn't sure they could ever be repaired. But she refused to give up. Every day she put the captain through gentle exercises designed to stimulate blood flow and nerve activity. She massaged his atrophied muscles and manipulated his joints to keep them flexible. Most importantly, she talked to him constantly, encouraging him to visualize movement even when his body couldn't respond. Prince Kael'Zeth often came to visit during the training sessions. His own recovery had continued to progress remarkably. He could now stand without assistance and take several steps with the help of walking supports. More amazingly, he had begun to regain some control over his wings, though he couldn't fly yet. Don't listen to the doubters, Prince Kael'Zeth told Captain Mordain during one visit. 6 months ago, I was convinced I would never move again. Now look at me. You were injured for 50 years, the captain replied. I've been like this for 4 times as long. So you have 4 times as much healing to catch up on. the prince said with a grin. That just means your recovery will be 4 times as impressive. As the deadline approached, Maya began to see small signs of progress. Captain Mordane's muscle tone was improving slightly. His breathing had become deeper and more regular. Most encouraging of all, he had begun to report new sensations in areas that had been numb for centuries. But Maya knew it wouldn't be enough. The council expected dramatic results, not subtle improvements. She needed something more, something that would prove beyond doubt that her methods could achieve the impossible. 2 weeks before the deadline, Maya made a desperate decision. She asked Captain Mordane to attempt something that every dragon considered sacred and defining. "Captain," she said, "I want you to try to fly." The old warrior stared at her in shock. "Child, my wings are broken. Even if my spine were healed, I couldn't generate the lift needed to get off the ground." "Maybe you don't need to get off the ground," Maya replied. "Maybe you just need to prove that your wings can move when you want them to." It was a terrible risk. If Captain Mordane tried to fly and failed completely, it would prove to the council that Maya's methods were worthless. But if he could show even the smallest amount of wing control, it would demonstrate that healing was possible where dragon medicine had failed. Captain Mordane looked at Maya for a long time. Then he looked at Prince Kael'Zeth, who nodded encouragingly. "Very well," the old captain said. "If I'm going to die anyway when you fail this test, I might as well die trying to fly." The day of Maya's final test arrived with gray skies and swirling winds around the Crystal Palace. The entire royal council had gathered in the Great Hall, along with hundreds of dragon nobles who had come to witness what many expected to be a human spectacular failure. Captain Mordane was brought into the hall on a floating platform, his ancient bronze scales gleaming despite his obvious nervousness. Maya walked beside him, her small human form dwarfed by the massive dragon surrounding them. She could feel the hostile stares of the crowd, but she kept her eyes focused on the captain. "Remember what we practiced," she whispered to him. "Don't try to force anything. Just listen to your body and trust that it remembers what to do." General Thexmore stood at the center of the hall, his red scales glowing with satisfaction. He was certain that today would end the humans' dangerous influence on dragon society once and for all. "Lords and ladies," he announced, "we are here to witness the final test of the human's alleged healing abilities. She has claimed that her primitive methods can succeed where our advanced medicine has failed. Today we will see the truth." King Zethkalar sat on his crystal throne, his expression grave. Beside him, Prince Kael'Zeth watched anxiously. The prince had made remarkable progress in recent weeks and could now walk short distances without assistance. But he knew that his recovery meant nothing if Maya failed today's test. Commander Veltaro stepped forward with a crystal device that hummed with energy. "I will monitor Captain Mordane's vital signs and neural activity throughout this demonstration," he announced. "Any artificial stimulation or deception will be immediately detected." Maya nodded calmly, though her heart was racing. She had spent the last 3 months working with Captain Mordane, slowly coaxing his damaged nervous system back to life. The progress had been gradual and sometimes frustrating, but she believed in what they had accomplished together. "Captain," she said quietly, "are you ready?" The old warrior looked around the hall at the sea of skeptical faces. Then he looked down at Maya, this small human who had treated him with more respect and care than he had received in 2 centuries. "I'm ready," he said. Maya began with the breathing exercises they had practiced every day. Captain Mordane closed his eyes and focused on the slow, rhythmic pattern that helped his energy flow more freely through his damaged body. As he breathed, his bronze scales began to glow with a faint inner light. The crowd murmured as the glow traveled down the captain's neck and chest. In a healthy dragon, the energy would flow smoothly throughout the entire body, but in Captain Mordane, it had always stopped at the point of his spinal injury. Today was different. The glow continued past the damaged area, flowing into his lower back and down toward his paralyzed legs. It was faint, much weaker than it should have been, but it was there. Even Commander Veltaro stared in amazement at his monitoring device, which showed neural activity where there should have been none. "Impressive," General Thexmore admitted grudgingly. "But energy flow is not movement. Can he actually control his limbs?" Maya looked at Captain Mordane encouragingly. "Try moving your left leg, just a small amount." The captain's face tightened with concentration. For long seconds nothing happened. Then slowly and with obvious effort, His left leg shifted slightly. The movement was tiny, barely visible, but in a limb that had been motionless for 200 years, it was a miracle. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Some dragons leaned forward to get a better look, while others shook their heads in disbelief. But General Thexmore was not satisfied. "Interesting," he said coldly, "but we were promised significant improvement. A slight leg twitch hardly proves the superiority of human medicine." Maya felt her chest tighten with fear. She had known this moment would come. The captain's progress was real and remarkable, but would it be enough to satisfy the council's demands? "There's one more thing we'd like to try," Maya said, her voice barely steady. She looked at Captain Mordain, who nodded grimly. They both knew this was their last chance. "Captain," Maya said, "try to move your wings." A deadly silence fell over the hall. Wings were the most sacred part of a dragon's body, the source of their freedom and power. For a dragon who had not moved his wings in 2 centuries to attempt flight was either heroic or insane. Captain Mordain closed his eyes again and focused all of his energy on the damaged wing muscles. Maya could see the strain on his face as he fought against 200 years of atrophy and nerve damage. For a moment, nothing happened. Then impossibly, his right wing began to twitch. The movement was small and unsteady, but it was unmistakably intentional. The captain was controlling his wing through conscious effort. The crowd gasped, but Captain Mordain wasn't finished. With a look of fierce determination, he began to spread both wings. They moved slowly and awkwardly, clearly weak from disuse, but they moved. For the first time in 2 centuries, Captain Mordain's wings were responding to his will. Then something even more amazing happened. The captain began to lift himself off his platform. It was only a few inches, and he could only hold the position for a few seconds, but he was flying. Actually flying under his own power. When he settled back down onto the platform, the hall was completely silent. Every dragon in the room stared at Captain Mordain in shock and awe. They had just witnessed something that their greatest doctors had declared impossible. Prince Kaelseth was the first to break the silence. He stood up from his chair near the throne and began to applaud. His clapping echoed through the vast hall, and slowly, other dragons began to join him. The applause grew louder and more enthusiastic, until the entire hall was filled with the sound of amazed appreciation. But not everyone was pleased. General Thexmore's face was dark with anger and frustration. "This proves nothing," he shouted over the applause. "Temporary improvements are not true healing. This human has simply delayed the inevitable with her primitive techniques." King Zethkalar stood up from his throne, his massive form commanding instant silence. "General, I believe we have seen enough evidence today. The humans' methods have achieved results that our own medicine could not. Your Majesty," Commander Veltaros said, his voice shaking, "surely you don't intend to abandon our proven medical traditions for the techniques of a recently discovered species." The king looked around the hall at his nobles and advisors. Many looked confused and uncertain, unsure how to reconcile what they had seen with their lifelong beliefs about dragon superiority. "I intend to help my people," the king said firmly. "If that means learning from humans, then perhaps it's time we admitted that wisdom comes in many forms." He walked down from his throne and stood before Maya, who immediately knelt in respect. "Human," he said, "you have proven that your methods have value. I hereby grant you the title of Royal Healer and authorize you to establish healing centers throughout the Empire." Maya looked up at the king with tears in her eyes. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I think my work here is done. Prince Kaelseth is walking again, and Captain Mordain is flying. They don't need me anymore." Prince Kaelseth limped forward, moving carefully but confidently on his own legs. "Maya, you've given me back my life. How can I ever repay you?" Maya smiled and touched the young prince's arm. "By helping others the way I helped you, Your Highness. Teach them that being different doesn't mean being broken. Show them that healing is possible even when everyone says it's not." Captain Mordain managed to stand up from his platform, his legs shaky but supporting his weight. "Human," he said formally, "you have restored my honor as a warrior. I pledge my loyalty to you for the rest of my days." "No," Maya said gently. "Your honor was never lost, Captain. You just needed to remember where to find it." 1 year later, Maya returned to the Dragon Empire as part of a human diplomatic mission. She was amazed by what she found. The Crystal Palace now housed a medical center where dragon doctors worked alongside human therapists. combining their advanced technology with human rehabilitation techniques. Prince Kaelseth had become a powerful advocate for disabled dragons throughout the Empire. He flew regularly now, though not as gracefully as dragons who had never been injured. He didn't care. He had learned that courage meant trying even when you weren't sure you could succeed. Captain Mordain led a new military unit composed entirely of dragons with physical limitations. They had developed fighting techniques that used their unique abilities and perspectives to achieve victory in ways that traditional dragon warriors never could. Most importantly, dragon society had begun to change its definition of strength. Physical power was still valued, but so were resilience, adaptability, and the courage to keep fighting when others gave up hope. As Maya walked through the palace corridors, she saw dragons of all ages working on rehabilitation exercises. Some were learning to walk again after accidents. Others were adapting to vision or hearing loss. All of them were discovering that being imperfect didn't make them worthless. In the Great Hall, she found a new tapestry hanging beside the ancient battle scenes. It showed a small human figure standing next to a dragon, both of them reaching toward the sky. The inscription read, "True strength is not the absence of weakness, but the courage to heal." Maya smiled as she read those words. Her brother Danny would have liked